welcome back, and we are back on the old tier maker with another Third Age Divide and Conquer ranking, but this time around, I will be honest, originally it was going to be ranking the rosters, but then I decided that that one's a kind of bit run of the mill, so I decided to lean a bit more on the creative aspect and actually rank the rosters, but based around aesthetic and design, and effectively how much I feel they represent what they were trying to go for, and how many could maybe use a little bit of tweaking or improvement. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. I have given it a little bit of thought before starting out, and throughout the video, I took some screenshots of the rosters in game just on the menu thing, so they'll be popping up throughout. But yeah, I'm. This one's going to be a little bit different, and it is again on personal view, so this isn't analytical or factual. It's just personal opinion, personal preference, and things. Although the aesthetic wise and the factions that I enjoy playing don't always line up, so there's it I already know it's not going to be the same sort of layout as the others. Well, a couple might be, but others won't be. But anyway, going to get started, and yeah, don't need to add in any more tiers for this one. I think what we'll actually do is we'll do this one in reverse. So we'll start down here with the Woodland Realm and we'll finish with the Anduin Vale. And we'll just move Sauron out of the way. So, the Woodland Realm. Now, I know in the other tier list things, and even with the roster one, as much as I like the Elven rosters, they changed around some of the unit scaling with Woodland Realm, and I wasn't overly keen on that. And I know their design's very archer focused, and I love using archers, but it's almost like too many for my taste. It gets a little bit oversaturated, so they'd either be low A or B in terms of that. But in terms of actual design, and the idea of they're meant to be woodland forces and the aesthetic with the little hints from the Five Armies film and things, I think A is a good one for them. I do quite like their design. It's pretty. It does what it needs to, and they have the elements of the royal, but they always stick to the sort of amber green, or the mix of like amber and green, and the very natural and woodland colours. And yeah, it's something that I do very much enjoy. So yeah, they're going to be in A, I think. Now Rohan. Rohan's whole aesthetic is very much Saxon in design, and I don't mind Saxon designs, but I have to admit in games they've never particularly been a favourite of mine. I prefer like Nord and things to Saxon, and there are elements of that, so I think in fairness they're going to go in B, but they're not going to be too high on B. They might end up being sort of middle B. And they have some. I love the factor though that their design is consistent throughout. Every unit you look at has that same aesthetic, so that is something that does give them a bit of a higher up, because that's not always the case. But I do very much enjoy that element. But again, Saxon designs, I like them, but it almost seems kind of limited on how much you can really do with them. So yeah, that's where they're going to sit for this. Rune. I'm not gonna lie, If this was Third Age Reforged, I'd actually put Rune straight in S because of the golden boy aesthetic throughout all of it. Um, I think at the end of the day, though, they're actually going to end up in a high A. I love the Luke units, the golden armor, and all of those designs and that idea. It's such a good design throughout, and I understand the aspects of the tribes. I really enjoy the Aralad designs, the Aralad units, the Dragon Riders, and the Dragon Guard. They're awesome, and the Loknarim and things like that look brilliant. I'm not as keen on the designs for the Daratai and the Balkoth, so that they do. The Daratai ones are all the Daratai. I'm trying to remember which one it is that have the two blades. Clan Warriors, I think. I like them, but a couple of the others. Mm, I having them in high A is fair enough, and obviously they are a unite the clan faction, so there was always going to be those differences. Um, I feel like the Balkod Spearmen look a bit too similar to the Aralad, where I think if you actually changed it around where the spears looked a bit more like the tribesmen, it would give that idea a bit more concrete nature. Um, right. Now we're on to a tough one. One of my favourite units in regular Third Age was in terms of design, was the Arnor Men at Arms with the Arnorian armour and then the cloak. I'm still kind of sad they got rid of the cloak. And I love Arnor armour. Arnorian armour is some of my favourite in all of Middle Earth and all of fantasy, in all honesty. And the Dunedain ranges and that style I like, and I like how they keep it throughout. The elite Dunedain I quite like, and the sort of helmed Dunedain are interesting. I don't know. It's just the loss of that, and but the fact that they still have to maintain. I think like Rune, they're probably going to be high A, and yeah, I'll put them a bit above Rune, and I don't think that's more of the case of they're lacking. Yeah, I think it's more of the case of there are factions just lined up here that I want to place first or place above them, so they might edge their way to S, but I'm also they may, or they may just stay at high A. Come on, my ad. Right, Moria. What to do about Moria? Moria OC. It, it's consistent, but it's also like they're meant to be a grey blob with their elites, and they do that very well. I think the thing that lets it down is like some of the earlier units, they're not really that adventurous in the different colour schemes or chaos or stuff, so it looking at a goblin army, it's hard to get too excited about the aesthetic. Like, they do what they're meant to do. They're meant to be a mass swarm, and they do that brilliantly, but yeah, it's like they're definitely not D tier, but I don't think I can necessarily put them higher than C. Mordor. Mordor edge just above Moria, and they edge just above Moria because yes, they have the mass blob, but they also have a wider variety. Like you've got units like the Sauron's Will and the Morgul Chosen, which are all dark and menacing, and then you've got the Temple units that really showcase this ominous sort of silent elite force. So there is several reasons why they edge a little bit above Moria, I feel, and I'm not counting like the units they get from the evil men. I'm just counting the aspect, and they're meant to be this dark and menacing host, and I think they do that a bit better than the goblins. So, and now this one's gonna break my heart because it's Lorien. To say the truth, I've never been the biggest fan of the Galadrim design from Vanilla Third Age. It it almost feels like it's too bright, and I know this is going to sound like a bit of a weird criticism, but I've always found that to be the case a little bit. Like it's always just seemed that little bit too brightly coloured, and but what I will say on the flip side to that is the Gerverleg and the Lothlorien March Wardens and the hooded Lorien warriors look absolutely fantastic because the whole Lorien aesthetic tends to lean more on like the grey kind of style, and it just sort of makes the units like the Galadrim Swordsman and the Yavanna's Chosen sort of stand out a little bit like a sore thumb. So unfortunately, I'm actually going to put Lorien down at B, and that makes me sad because I love Lothlorien. But because they have got those hooded units that do quite well, they are going to go above Rohan. Khazad Dum. Ooh. I know because of the nature of their campaign that is understandable, but Khazad Dum's design seems... I don't know, it always just felt like it was a little bit all over the place. Like, I can understand with, like, They do have that line of the units with... I can't remember the different names, but the Legion units with the shields and the almost like Romanization of them, and that's quite cool. But outside of that, they do feel like they're a little bit all over the place. So, as cool as that is, I think they're gonna stick here with Lorien, to be honest. Yeah, I don't have too much to say about it. The Legion units are cool, but the rest of it seems a bit all over, and I know that kind of plays into the style of the campaign, but still, it's a bit off for me. Especially when you compare it to like the other dwarven factions and the sort of style that they follow. Can't. Khan's aesthetic has improved since they got the update, but it's also like not counting the Oricani dwarven units, which are only available if you do certain choices. I think Khan's design wise are probably down here. I like the Variag units, and I like the rechange they did on the nobles. And that's kind of it. I think the Warlord Guards are an interesting design choice, but not too much. But then there's just so many sort of like samey kind of units with the horse archers and the nomads and things, and it's not one that I hold too highly an opinion of. So they don't look like... The thing I want to absolutely clarify is there is no faction here that the design choice I absolutely hate. So I do like all of them. It's just there are some that are more appealing or follow a bit of a better pattern than others. I I know that Rohan are just ranked above with the Saxon design, but that's more because of personal take on Saxon designs. I enjoy them, but there's only really so much you can actually do with them that I've seen. So, but now we're on to one that, with the exception of the half orc units, which admittedly I've never been overly fond of the design of, with the exception of them, Isengard's S tier. The Urukai, the whole aesthetic, the dark armored tide that they give, the almost like elite nature that they show off or attempt to almost like mock. It's just, yeah, they just look phenomenal. And it's something that the modding team did an amazing job with. And I know that they get like trolls, like the trolls of the White Hand and things, and to be honest, you can armor upgrade those trolls and they get like Urukai armor, and I don't think it looks too bad. So, yeah, that's another thing though I will say. The trolls for all of them look really good. Like, the trolls and the creatures always look quite good, but as a whole, Isengard, probably more than any of the other factions on this list, follow a very similar pattern throughout the vast majority. And yeah, it works. It just works. High Elves. I was always a large fan of Linden as a faction, and I was kind of sad when they got the two merged. But at the same time, Linden's design at the time was like a silver version of Imladris for the elites. And I think one thing that has seriously benefited the High Elves is the aesthetic with the merger, because now they've all got that very similar theme except for the ultimate elites. And even then, the Smiths of Eregion still have the sort of silvery blue kind of aesthetic. Mithlond Nobles, the Sindar units look fantastic. And yeah, that's pretty much, to be honest, yeah, they're going in S tier as well. And also Harad are as well. Harad's North African, Indian kind of theme that they have is just done so well. And I think the difference between them and Rune is that you do get the different tribes. You get the Trollmen, you get the Muhad, you get all of these, but they genuinely feel like their own sets. Like I said with Rune, like the Daratai look okay, the Balkoth spears look a little bit too samey to the Aralad, and the tribesmen on their own are absolutely fine. Whereas with Harad, you get the Southron units, which are their own thing, the Haradrim units, their own thing, the Trollmen are their own design, the Muhad are their own design, the Mumakil look amazing, even the Hashari even the Hashari shadows look like just a dark, menacing ranger. So yeah, Harad for me have always looked superb. Third Age, Divide and Conquer, Reforged, in all of them they've just looked awesome. So yeah, they're right up there in S tier as well, alongside the Elves and Isengard. So nice little interesting mix there. Gundabad. The Snowwalk design for Gundabad is alright. And the elites don't look too bad. But outside of that, it's like Moria again. They don't have a discernible pattern. Like the Pale Uruks look quite cool, and I wish they had a little bit more of it. Like I know you get the Bulks champions, which have a kind of similar style, but then it's still limited to like just 2 units, and yeah, I just find it hard to get excited about Gundabad's aesthetic again. And it also feels like, despite you getting a couple of the Snow Orc units, it still feels like they've got almost like less of a discernible pattern than the Goblins. So, whilst I don't think I am going to put any faction in D tier for this, but I think if I was going to, Gundabad would be the closest. Now on to arguably the most iconic of all good factions in Middle-earth, Gondor. Gondor are going in A. It's like, yeah, the fiefdom units again. They have, and to be honest, the reason why Gondor aren't higher is my own personal view. Is my own personal preference. To be honest, it's nothing more than that. The fiefdom units all look unique enough to be their own thing. The Anorian units, like the regular infantry, and that just look. They look absolutely how they should for Gondor, and it's just got. And even the Osgiliath units have their own design, which is great. It's just I can't knock anything about Gondor's design, so actually, to be honest, I'm going to put them a bit higher than that. The only reason they're lower than the Dunedain is because I prefer Arnorian design to Gondorian. So, it's mainly the helmets and the cloaks and things. But even like the upgrade in design they gave to the Blackroot Vale archers, it's like it's inspired from the Lord of the Rings Conquest game, and I love that game. So, wow. Ered Luin. In all honesty, I love the blue and silver design of the Longbeards, but Ered Luin's design outside of those Longbeard units, it can be a bit all over the place at points. So I think they're going to probably end up being high B. There are units that I really love the design of, and there's others that I'm a bit like, eh. So, again, it's one of those things, like, that theme is nice, I just wish it kind of got stuck to a bit longer in the roster. Erebor. Erebor are one that I'm seriously stuck on, to be honest. In fact, the next three are one. Now we're back, and upon inspection, yeah, Ered Luin are going to remain at high B. They do have a bit more of the theme than I remembered, but part of the reason they're going to remain there is because Erebor do edge slightly above them. Erebor's design colour-wise is not overly exciting, but at the exact same time, the Iron Helm aesthetic that you see in things, they do quite well. It maintains and it keeps throughout pretty much the majority of their roster. It's like, I think one of the only units that's an exception to that is like ones that are notable from different regions, like the Dragon Slayers of Ered Mithrin, but then even they have somewhat similar design, but then you've got like the Stonefoot Spearmen, but again, logically they're from the Oricani, so. But it's a very sort of like silvery dark design that keeps throughout, but it works for what they need to, and it maintains that stalwart variety throughout them all. Inidwaith. To be perfectly honest, and I haven't done anything with Enidwaith since they had like the upgrade with the clans and things. But for both them and Dunland on a design choice, I'm gonna put them high C, and that's more of the case of they're not really ones that I've paid too much attention to. I know Dunland have the sort of like wolf units that kind of keep them having some thematic, and from what I've seen, the Enidwaith clans do maintain differences, but it's also the case of because of the nature of the two factions, it's like there's not meant to be that much professionalism, so it's kind of difficult to get overly excited about them. I'm sure if I had a proper look at the Enidwaith factions and Enidwaith units and Dunland units, they'd probably edge a bit higher, but for now, it just more because of a lack of knowledge of the two, they're in C. Or lack of knowledge of one since its update, and lack of knowledge of the other in sort of general. Dorwinian. Now, obviously, with Dorwinian, you get two different options. You get the elven route, you get the human route. With the exception of the Wintercourt Paladins, I do have to admit I've never been the biggest fan of how the elite infantry for Dorwinian look. They maintain the purple boy variety throughout, and that colour theme does stay throughout quite a bit of it, but it's the elves look absolutely amazing for Dorwinian, I will give them that, but the elite human side of it kind of lets them down, I think, a little bit. So, I think they're pretty much gram for gram with Lothlorien on that, maybe a little bit higher, because I think the elves for Dorwinian do look a bit better than the elite for the Galadrim. Dol Guldur. I'm not going to spend much time on Dol Guldur. I think they're a bit better than Mordor and Khand, but not too much. Their idea is an ambush faction, very hooded and shadowy figures, and they do that very well. There's no like horrendously standout. Like the most standout unit they probably have are either the Castellans, who are meant to be like the old elite, Kamal's bodyguard, which are Kamal, or the flippant spiders, which are spiders. So there you go. Are always going to stand out a little bit, giant spiders. So, but the whole aesthetic doesn't change too much throughout. The Dol Guldur units have their own design. The goblins have their own. So, and they do meld very well with the Mirkwood. The Mirkwood Orcs don't look too bad. I prefer the Uruk-hai, and I even prefer Mordor's Orcs to them, but overall they fit the bill with the rest of Dol Guldur's roster a lot more. So that's what I have to say on that part. But now we are going straight into another S tier. I absolutely love Dol Amroth. Its design, it sticks and it maintains throughout the entire thing. The swan aesthetic, the sea naval kind of purpose is like, if it wasn't in those designs and things, I would be when I look at things with the Athalas design, when I look at kingdoms like Cavoltir or even the ogres or the sea elves, I my mind always drifts towards like, what if I took inspiration from this or something, and it's like, I need to make them my own thing, so it's something I have to always sort of resist doing. The Seaboard units look phenomenal in my view. They look like genuine professional infantry and ideas. The Nimrodel Mariners, the sort of like the little elven influence in there, they look great for their own little unique thing. The Haven Guard and the Amroth Knights, or the Talon Knights look, it's just they maintain the colour scheme and the sea and swan aesthetic throughout the vast majority of their stuff, and yeah, it puts them up into the S tier in terms of design. They look absolutely stunning. Dale. Another one I'm kind of stuck on. um, They'll maintain a decent theme throughout the most of their units. I will give them that. With the exception of like the militia units, most of them still maintain a very similar color scheme. They do keep an eye, and as much as I prefer Dorwinian as a faction, I think in some aspects the Dalian humans actually do look better. So I think they're probably going to belong there. I don't. I like Erebor and Eredluin more than I do Dale, but I still say the Dalian humans I think have a better kind of design than Dorwinian's sort of like middle and elite. Like, if I was turning around and comparing like Dalian swordsmen to like the Thorn units would win, but Bree. Oh, Bree are always tough in these. Bree are always tough because it's like they have such a random variety. But even then, with the merchant units, the Breland units, they still maintain a pretty decent aesthetic. And one thing that I will say, and I know it's a really silly thing to say, but one thing I love about Bree, and I love the little bit that Dale have as well, is the use of kettle helmets. I always enjoy kettle helmets being seen, and the Bree have, on like the helmet style, Bree have like the most traditional like medieval helmets, and I always find that quite funny. Not funny in a bad way, but funny in a way that I do very much enjoy. Um, and their whole theme is also pretty decent, so I think I'm actually gonna put them just behind Erid Lewin as well. They keep to their theme quite a bit. They don't really have an overlay of a colour palette. I don't think it's a bit kind of very variety, but the design sticks throughout, like the sort of varied design. It's a little bit green, a little bit yellow, a little bit darker. So, and that's not counting them getting like dwarven and elven mercenary stuff and things. The Ardenium. On a personal view, I think the Ardenium are okay looking. I do feel like for a faction that was like trying not to get them mixed up with the old Haven of Umbar, which was always meant to be like piracy and things, because the Corsair units do kind of lack, I think, for our Ardenium now. Their whole theme as like an evil Numenorian faction is good, and one thing that I will give that I do like, they've never been a favourite faction of mine, but one thing I will say is getting the evil versions of some of like the Gondor units, like with the darker tint that you can with them, I do quite enjoy that little twist as well. So, design wise, and with that in mind, because that is an aesthetic choice that is unique to them, I think they're probably just going to fit behind the Woodland Realm, I think. They have their quirks, but I yeah, it's like if you look at them as an evil Numenorian faction, which is like what they aim to be, they are brilliant. But if you still want to go with like the kind of piracy angle with them, like the Corsairs, it's a bit eh. So, but now we're on to one that I find quite interesting. And I find it interesting ever since they turned around and made them a straight up evil men faction instead of another orc faction. And that is Angmar. Angmar are a faction that they almost have inadvertently a loose version of what Rune have, or Harad with all of that with the tribes and the clans. But I'd say Angmar's design choices do it better than the Easterlings, I think. The Rude Hour units have always looked really nice, like they're meant to be hillmen, they're not meant to be overly professional, and they look the part. The whole dedication of like the Warg cavalry and things, I think the Angmar Wargs look, or the Angmar Wargs and Wolves and things, they look awesome. And then the whole sort of like icy cold blue and dark aesthetic that the Angmar men get throughout the entire design from the traditional like I can't even remember the name of the unit. It's not the Hillman, but it's like the first like spear and shield unit they get, all the way up to the like the dark shards and that. They all maintain that kind of similar design. Sorry if you can hear that noise outside. I think Angmar do a very good job, and on a design choice, is there anything that I dislike about the Angmar design choice? To be honest, I don't think there actually is. Angmar are S tier. I was thinking, okay, they'll be like middle A, but no, I think they're actually S tier, and we'll reorder S tier in a moment after we finish off with the Anduin Vale. Anduin Vale, the Bjorning units have their own. I know their aesthetic choice tends to be like no like overlay armor and massive beards, but it still works. The Aethiad for Anduin, I love their design, and the Woodsman units do what they need to. I think Anduin's colours, like they're meant to be woodland colours, and woodland colours are nice, but then for me they're not the most standout or things. But I think Anduin fit nicely between Rune and the Woodland Realm in terms of design. The Carrot Guard and all of that, they look nice and they do enough to have an elite tier. I also love the fact of how, if you really think about it, in some cases the sort of elite looking units for Anduin are almost Rohirric in design. And I don't know, maybe that's something about Rohan that they almost do the Saxon theme too much, and they could have done with some units having a little bit of a different tweak to them. Not much, but a little bit on the lower end, not just the higher end. But because it feels like some of the lower end units for Rohan are almost like they almost look like they're lower units but with armor upgrades when they're not. So okay, but we are going to just do a little bit of tweaking of S tier rearranging here. And I think how it's going to go is I think Angmar first, Dol Amroth 2nd, High Elves 3rd, Harad 4th, Isengard 5th. So, to round off the list, we have in S tier Angmar, Dol Amroth, the High Elves, Harad, and Isengard. For the A tier, we have the Northern Dunedain, we have Gondor, we have Rhûn, we have the Vale of Anduin, or Anduin Vale, we have the Woodland Realm, we have the Arad and Iron, we have the Dwarfs of Erebor. For B, we have Ered Luin, we have Bree, we have Dale, we have Dorwinion, we have Lothlorien, we have Khazad Dum, we have Rohan, we have Dol Guldur, Khand, and Mordor. And then for C, we have the Dunlendings, Enedwaith, Moria, and to round off the list, Gundabad. And then, if we really want to go for aesthetic choice, we'll stick Sauron in D because he has no units. And just to give something into the D tier. But that was the list. And again, this was on my own opinion, and to be honest, there were a couple of surprises on where I was going to rank. I didn't think I was going to rank Dale that high. I know mid B's not exactly high, but still. I didn't think Erebor were going to end up in A necessarily, and I certainly didn't think that at the end of it I would decide to stick Angmar right at the top. But I just love the Angmar design, so there we go. And yeah, doing the aesthetic choice for things that are like massively orc or goblin, like Moria or Mordor or Gundabad, is a little bit difficult. But did our best. So, if you enjoyed this video, please do comment, like, and subscribe. Please do also comment if you've got any ideas for any other. We'll keep with Divide and Conquer tier lists, or and Lord of the Rings Conquest tier list that I could do maybe on the maps or something like that. That wouldn't be too bad. Or ranking the missions or things. But yeah, I'm trying to keep the tier list Lord of the Rings themed for the time being. I don't necessarily want to branch out into like Total War necessarily. Could rank the Napoleon factions though, or the Empire factions. I think the Empire Darth Maul factions might be a bit more interesting than Napoleon, because Napoleon has a wide design choice, but then it gets a bit limited when you start looking at the minor factions, I should say. Yeah. I mean, I would love to do some Athalas tier lists, but there's absolutely no point at the moment, so. But anyway, that's where this is going to leave off for today. This is actually the shortest of the three so far. There will be edits in, and there will be also a cut whilst I was just searching for these things. But welcome to the Kingdom of Athalas and the world of Felomine books. And just before I go, because this will be, I have posted on the YouTube already, and I won't worry about releasing it as a short. Basically, over on Twitch this week, because I am going to release this video early. I think I'm not going to wait until Thursday to release it. So I might aim to release it for tonight, actually, if I can get the editing done in time. As of this week over on the Twitch, is going to be all Dorwinion this week. I want to try and push and get more of that campaign done so we can start properly progressing through it, and because I know we're at a point where we might end up just getting hit with run-of-the-mill army after army, and I just want to try and cycle through that if possible. So, yeah, if you want to catch that, please do check out over on the Twitch. I will, after next month gets underway and things get, because there are some changes coming, once that's all set in motion and things, I will release a proper schedule for the streams. But for now, that's all I'm going to say. welcome. I've done the exit, so cheerio. Thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you would like to see some similar content to this one, you can click there. Or if you would like to change around and have an explore of some of the other content, then you can check out the link below, which will be to a playlist. And if you would like to check out the content on other pages or socials, or if you would like to explore some of the other elements in detail, or pick up a book or whatever, or come and chat to me on Twitch when I'm alive, then down there. And as you can see, it has a list of what to expect on each of those platforms. And until next time, welcome to the Kingdom of Avalas, the world of Fellow Mind books. Please do like, please do subscribe, and if you want to, pop out a comment.